about to get started, just waiting for our technology to take us on the webs. All right. So welcome everyone to this launch, this book reading of Exiting the Bluegrass Turnpike by Benjamin Rue Silliman. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder, along with my lovely partner, Donnie Jokum, of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is the room you are in right now. And the Bureau is an independent, all-volunteer queer bookstore that Donnie and I founded in 2012, and that has been here at the LGBT Community Center since 2014. As an all-volunteer bookstore, we rely on sales and donations to keep this machine going. So I'm going to pass a bag around for donations. We especially encourage you to make a donation if you know you won't be buying a book. If you're able to make a donation and buy a book, that would be great, but these are tough times and we understand if that's not the case. There's some cash in the bag if you need some change. There's also a QR code if you'd like to give through Venmo. Anyone online, if you would like to give through Venmo, you can do that at BGSQD. And our regular business hours are Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open later when we have events such as this. And we keep quite a busy calendar here at the Bureau. So please check out our upcoming events on our website, bgsqd.com. And if you're not already on our newsletter, you can sign up for that at the back of the room or on our website. And you'll get an email every other Monday about our many upcoming events. So before I introduce Maria Peroni, who is going to be in conversation with Benjamin, I'm going to read a land acknowledgement. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. The Bureau also recognizes Palestinian liberation as a fundamental part of our collective queer liberation. And we encourage you to read our flyer on why we feel it is important, especially for queer people, to speak out in solidarity with Palestinians. And that flyer is in the back corner, so please check that out. So let me introduce Maria Peroni, is an associate professor of accountancy at St. John's University in the Tobin College of Business. Maria has published numerous articles in the field of taxation in the Journal of Accountancy and CPA Journal. She and Benjamin are currently collaborating on an article focusing on the 50 years of the Earned Income Tax Credit. Maria is a triple alumna of St. John's, including a JD, and holds a graduate degree in tax law from New York Law School. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Good evening, everybody. As Greg mentioned, my name is Maria Peroni, and I am pleased to be here. I am an associate professor and a colleague of Dr. Silliman, or Benjamin. We work together at the Tobin School, and Ben is our chair and is also the leader of the Faculty Association Union. I was proud to serve as one of his beta readers for this novel and was tremendously moved by it. But enough about me. A little bit about Benjamin. A little bit. To refer to my notes, Benjamin holds 7 degrees. Yeah, 7. Can't mess this up. 2 in accounting, 1 in taxation, a master's and a doctorate in higher education. After earning his doctorate at NYU, Benjamin returned to school and completed a degree of economics at Columbia and one in public administration from North Carolina, Chapel Hill. He's written over 40 journal articles, including the prestigious Max Block from the editors of, received the prestigious Max Block from the editors of the CPA Journal in 2015 for he and his co-authors' work on tax implications for same-sex married couples. Benjamin's passion is definitely narrative writing, and I think the book is tremendously moving. Through Zachary, we get an idea of a high school boy's coming to terms with his sexual orientation in the early 80s. And then we see how this vulnerable boy endures unthinkable acts. And we are rewarded as readers to learn that people did love Zachary, his loving friend Gwen, and their beautiful mezzanine love friendship. We also learn about Jeremiah, the musician, and their beautiful, who inspired Zach to love in life on his terms. Jeremiah also showed a loving kindness to Zach. Zach's Aunt Norma, who loved him no matter what. And Fred Mills, the movie theater manager, who mentors Zach, giving him kindness, love, and perspective as a gay man. But we cannot forget Zach's father, Dave Kingdon, and their push-pull relationship. In the end, love is what saved young Zachary Kingdon. The author believes that these were signs from God that Zach's life mattered, and I cannot agree more. It was an honor and privilege to introduce you to Benjamin Rue Silliman.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maria. That was lovely. It is so lovely to be here and to be introduced by one of my greatest colleagues is a tremendous honor, and I thank you for that. Thank you for coming out today to my book reading. It is such a pleasure to be here with each of you to discuss my debut novel, Exiting Bluegrass Turnpike, share some of my excerpts from the book, and share my thoughts on why I wrote it. But I want to thank a lot of important people. First, I want to thank the Bureau of General Services Queer Divisions, Greg Newton and Donnie Yoakum and his staff for this important independent bookstore. Thank you for holding this reading at this great venue. It is such a great honor to me. And it's very important that we continue to support independent bookstores and not Amazon. I want to deeply thank David Cashin of Kevin Anderson Writing. He couldn't be here tonight because of an emergency, but he helped me in writing this book, developing the story and the narrative. And along with his assistance on Exiting, and also with my forthcoming novel, A Cardinal in Gratz Park. Working with David was like taking a master class in writing. I am forever grateful, and I want to thank Rabbit House Press, an independent press, for acquiring the work and publishing it. The publisher, Aaron Chandler, gave me great latitude as a writer that many other publishers would have resisted. And Aaron and Emily Wilhoy let me, as a writer, allow Zachary Kingdon's journey exist on each printed page in an authentic way as a young gay man. And I want to thank all my friends who are here, many of my former students from St. John's University who are doing such great things in the world. And lastly, to write a novel, to write something that is so personal and at times horrifically painful. I could not have achieved this if I had not been in a safe space in my life. And I'm truly in a safe space since I met Frank Hernandez on March 28, 2000. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary. And just a few weeks ago, our 8th wedding anniversary. So thank you, honey. You are my forever man for so many reasons. Getting a book published, as I have learned, is next to impossible. And tenacity is very necessary, but also never straying from your roots. I exiting the Bluegrass Turnpike was rejected by 126 New York agents. And I wear that as a badge of honor. I'm very proud of that. I have a friend right now who's a chair in another department who's just put out query letters and is being rejected by every single one. And she's like, oh my God. And I understand why completely, because that's just part of the process. And last summer, a friend of mine from Versailles, Kentucky, Brian Marcy, we both worked for Fred Mills at the Kentucky Theater many, many years ago, met in Midtown for lunch, and he referred me to a friend of his, Liz Carey, who leads a book writers club in Lexington. And Liz kindly, once I wrote her, referred me to Aaron Chandler at Rabbit House, and here I am tonight. So I've come full circle, and it makes this book mean more to me that it ended up being a pure Kentucky project. I'm a Kentuckian, Liz is a Kentuckian, Brian's a Kentuckian, and Aaron is a Kentuckian. So thank you for helping me realize this dream and making this book possible. A bit about the times we're living in. The news of stories that malign members of the LGBTQ plus community are unbelievable. The delegitimizing of programs that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion are under constant attack. And I know there are a lot of differing opinions, but I will say this. It hurts my soul to hear our political leaders try to delegitimize our transgender sisters and brothers, women, individuals of color. That hurt is something that I understand on a deeply personal level. And when people malign and harm people for something that they cannot help, it hurts my heart. We need to always remember that every human being has value. Each person is a child of God. Every person has a heart, has lungs, has feelings, has worth, and belongs. And in fact, the pain that I endured when I was much younger is still with me today. But pain can and does eventually turn into endurance, strength, love, and empathy. And that's why I wrote this book. This novel is quite personal to me. It takes place in Lexington, Kentucky. This is a story about Zachary Kingdon, a 17-year-old boy who's walking through life carrying the burden from an unspeakable act that happened to him during the summer of 1981. I wanted to share some backstory, content which never made it into the book. I was born and raised in Lexington. I had an upper middle class upbringing, attended the best public schools in town. It sounds like a picturesque situation. But as a young boy, I knew I was different than everyone. Kids in school, my brothers and sisters, neighborhood kids. And at first I thought it was because I had a noticeable speech impediment, a condition I had to practice to overcome. And even today, certain words I struggle enunciating, so I write them out when I can't pronounce things. I was in a union meeting recently and we had to stop so I could write out the word that I couldn't pronounce. And everybody was very patient about that, which was nice. In addition, as a child, I had great difficulty with reading comprehension. My father took me to the best literacy specialist in town, Mrs. Bailey. And I was initially enrolled in special education as a very young child, but progressed into regular classes after my father fought the school. I have attention deficit disorder and dyslexia, and I'm an accountant. I've been very successful at it with dyslexia, strangely enough. My father was a huge part of my life, and he is a significant character in the book. And I'm the youngest of 5 children and felt quite alone. And in the book, there are only 2 siblings to keep things simpler in the story. In real life, we lived in a 6-bedroom home on Lakewood Court until I was 13. There were no children around to play with, so I learned to do things on my own. Frog hunting in a nearby creek, bike riding, watching Phil Donahue, who turned me into a liberal, and listening to music. There are also horses across the street because they became my friends, and I fed them apples and carrots each visit, and I loved them and missed them. And without the horses, I would have been an extremely lonely child. When I was in the 1st grade, my mother began to disappear from our lives. I used to come home to an empty house after school. And in the first grade, I learned to make my own breakfast, wash my dishes, and get myself off to school. My mother was an alcoholic, and terrible things happened to her. Mommy was committed several times to a hospital for manic depression. And as a child of an alcoholic mother, when I stepped off the school bus, I never knew quite what to expect when I walked into my home. It was either empty or my mother was still asleep in bed. And when I was in junior high, my parents separated. We had moved to a much smaller home after my siblings had long moved out. So it was just my father and myself. My mother's life of being a mom and wife ended when I was quite young, and when she stopped cooking and began to have several nervous breakdowns. My mother was viewed as an outcast by my father, and her illness consumed her. But she ultimately moved out when I was in the 7th grade, and I rarely saw her. My father became my mother and my father, and that was difficult for him. Daddy was a Depression-era man who worried about everything, particularly me. He was both incredibly sweet and loving and would yell his head off at you at the top of his lungs. And if my shoes were untied or I did not properly tuck in my shirt, or I did not make my bed or left my books on the couch, he would yell at me. My father did not know what to do without his wife, and this is the world that I came into. This is the world Zachary Kingdon came into. And as much as I adored and loved my mother, when I was 18, she discovered that I was gay after my sister informed her that she and my brother had gone through my drawers and found gay magazines. My mother wrote me hateful letters, and then the outcast label shifted from her to me. I was considered a freak, a deviant, a horrible person, and because I am gay, my brother told me that I was never welcome to visit his home because he had young children. So this has been my reality. And while I wrote Exiting the Bluegrass Turnpike as a fiction, many of the aspects in the book parallel my life. So I will refer to myself as Zach. This is a story of how a 17-year-old boy who was grappling with his sexuality was outed at Henry Clay High School, and the brutal pain that actually resulted. Zachary Kingdon also walked through life during the summer of 1981, when the story opens, feeling tremendous inner turmoil. That summer, a terrible thing happened to Zach, an incident so terrible, where he was raped and nearly killed at the hands of 2 men who had been stalking him outside of the ice cream store where he worked. And in the aftermath, Zach wanted to end his life, but could not go through with it. You see, Zach had to give his father insulin every day. He had to do things for his ailing father, whom he loved dearly. And Zach's sense of obligation kept him alive. So let me read you a passage. So I know a few people here have come to a couple of these readings, so I'm mixing up the passages a little so that I don't read the same thing. So this is from chapter 3. When Zach came home from swimming at the Lexington Country Club, he was feeling better, and after showering and dressing for dinner, he heard the television turn on downstairs. It was nearly 4:30, and given his low sugar levels, Pop had to sit down for his dinner no later than 5 each night. Zach quickly walked down the steps in a yellow polo shirt, khaki pants, and topsiders with no socks. Those goddamn moccasins are unacceptable. Where are you? Where are your socks? Go and put on some dress shoes with socks. What are you, a hobo? Pop admonished. Zach frowned, then slowly started back up the stairs. I don't have all goddamn day, Pop barked. And halfway up the staircase, Zach stopped, glared at his father, then turned and slowly stepped up 1 step at a time while his father was about to erupt. Toothpick wedged in his mouth, flipping up and down, he added, "Hurry the hell up, goddammit, and stop being such a smartass." As large as Pop had become since his divorce finalized in 1980, he had been even heavier years earlier. Zach saw how his daddy indulged in rich foods, dessert, ice cream, any kind of pie, pecan sandies, marshmallow pinwheel cookies, Brock's candies, including chocolate-covered raisins, peanuts, and sugar-covered gumdrops. He'd heard that his pop's desire for fatty food and desserts began when he was a young boy growing up in Danville, Kentucky during the Depression. Food was his release. And since his separation years ago from Zach's mother, Virginia, Pop fixated on food, causing his health to further decline. A few minutes later, Zach and Pop were in the Cadillac Fleetwood on their way to dinner. It was hot outside, but the air conditioning was blasting in the car. Pop had on one of his Ema Sumac Mambo tapes playing. "Where are we going?" Zach asked. "Morrison's," it was his father's reply. Zach knew to keep conversation to a minimum when his father was hungry, holding all requests for money or permission to do something. And when Zach was younger, he had learned how to be diplomatic with his father. And rule number 1 was not to speak until Pop had finished his dinner. He thought about when he was 6, when he would climb into the car with his daddy, and they would drive to go pick up Sunday dinner at Kentucky Fried Chicken. It was in the late 60s, and for most families, Sundays were considered the day of the Lord in Lexington. But to Zach's mother, Virginia, it was the day the stove was cool. Dave would drive each Sunday to Kentucky Fried Chicken on Romney Road, where he would order a bucket of chicken with all the fixings, biscuits, mashed potatoes, and white gravy. Ever since Zach could remember, Sundays at 4 o'clock meant climbing up in the Cadillac with Pop, going to pick up a bucket for Din Din. It was one of the few occasions on when Zach felt close to his father as a small boy, and it became their Sunday ritual. Pop referred to little Zach as Daddy's little helper. And he placed the hot bucket of chicken in between his little legs to make sure that it was held secure for the drive home. The bucket was often piping hot, hurting his legs, making him squirm. And on one drive, Zach would imitate his father's driving by turning the round bucket left and right, pretending it was like a steering wheel. Pop yelled, "Stop playing, hold that chicken tight, God damn it. Don't spill the bucket." You have to know this man, he was something. Zach remembered becoming scared and started to cry when his father yelled at him. Pop gently pulled his little helper up next to him, reached down, and kissed the boy's head. The two got into silly conversations on those Sunday drives. Once Zach asked his father about the images on the side of the bucket, which suggested reasons for getting a bucket, including parties, dinner guests, and Mom's Day Off, as depicted by a woman with a coat waving to her family as she was walking away. Zach asked his dad when his mommy had a day off. "Your mama doesn't want a day off, son. She's happy with the way things are, and she should be." He remembered replying he would like to have a day off. Pop would get annoyed. "God damn it, son." He said it a lot. "God damn it, son. You get a day off every day. Someday you will know how hard it is to make the money to buy that chicken." David Kingdon ranted about how women's lib was ruining America. And at age 6, Zach listened to his father pontificate how during the Depression, his own mother had to work 12-hour shifts as a waitress at the townhouse in Danville after his father had died and was barely able to keep a roof over his and his brother's heads. "Son, my mama had no choice. She had to work hard to take care of your Uncle George and me, and we had to work several jobs to help out." At the end of summer 1981, Zach learned from his friend Matt Adler that a fellow student, Gwen Ferris, had been in a near-fatal car accident. Zach had interviewed Gwen for the yearbook after she had been elected vice president of student government, and the two hit it off as friends. She survived the accident with no physical scars, but she suffered inside as a result. Zach sent her a card the next day, able to shift his pain and try to offer empathy and kindness to another person who was also suffering. Gwen was an absolutely beautiful girl, lovely brown hair, gorgeous face. And while Zach was having difficulty that morning walking the halls of Henry Clay on that first day, he saw Gwen in the hallway as he was walking to his accounting class. Find this one for you. When the bell rang, Zach exited his novelist class to his accounting class, keeping his head down and avoiding eye contact. Then he turned to walk forward and noticed standing at the end of the hall near the stairwell was Gwen Ferris with two other girls. She had such a nice figure, beautiful auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail with a grosgrain ribbon, brown eyes, and sweet, lightly tanned face. Her smile was contagious. She too came from the Lexington school, but exuded warmth, which had been especially genuine and nice to Zach, last year. She has such a lovely, calm, gentle manner, he thought. Gwen made eye contact with Zachary and began as he walked closer. The news of her accident made his heart sink. She could have easily lost her life, he thought. Zach felt so bad that she had been suffering from her experience after Matt told him the news. He followed through and wrote her a card the next day. And after he approached, Zach stopped and said hello to both of the girls, Rebecca and Anna, then turned to Gwen, reaching out his hand, which she took, and gently said, "Gwen, hello. I'm so sorry what happened to you. I've been thinking about you. You look amazing, and I'm glad to see you, and I do hope you are feeling better." "Thank you, Zach. I received your lovely card." Her eyes began to well up. "That was so sweet of you." And after releasing his hand, Zach then started up the stairs, turned, saying, "See you," with a huge smile. The two girls also had huge grins on their faces. He thought it was so nice to see Gwen, and during the interview last year, he remembered how the two of them had laughed about so many things. Deep inside, it troubled him that she suffered, and he felt good she seemed to be doing better, causing him to smile widely as he walked to his next class. "She's wonderful," he thought. "I want to get to know her better." So over the next few days, Zach's friend Matt, who knew of Zach's secret that he was gay, unfortunately could not keep the secret and informed Amy, Zach's ex-girlfriend. Amy and Zach had terrible confrontation after school one day, and she told Zach that she wished she had not wasted her time being with him. But worse, many students began to find out Zach's secret, and the abuse followed. Several hateful notes were shoved into Zach's locker vent on a daily basis. A cruel, direct confrontation by one of Zach's friends from Boy Scouts occurred in the hallway. Then there were phone calls at home, and he was eventually being attacked by 3 wrestlers. However, Zach sat next to Gwen in psychology class, and they became very close friends. Gwen encouraged Zach to try out for a musical, You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, where he was cast as Snoopy. And Zach also told her the truth about himself in an emotional revelation at Joe Bologna's pizza parlor. Gwen began to dearly love Zach, and he began to love her. Women play an important role in gay men's lives, and she did for Zach. And while Gwen had a boyfriend, she began to see the value in Zach's kindness. The two formed a very special kind of unexpected love for each other. Should have had these next page is marked, I apologize. So this was the day after Zach's birthday. And Zach parked the car and the two got out. He grabbed a bag of apples from the back seat. "Who's this for?" she asked. "You'll see." The two walked toward the fence. It was the Engel farm, which had several horses running freely on the pasture. Zach admired the picturesque open hillside, which was a perfect playground for these beautiful creatures. The smell of the freshly dropped hay blended the note of cut grass, and he peered over the black wooden fence, climbed up on the bottom rung, and started making smooching noises. And within seconds, 3 horses appeared that began slowly walking towards them. "Come here, sweetheart. It's good to see you," Zach said, smiling widely at the animals, revealing his dimples. "Here you go, baby." He gently held out an apple to one of the horses. Gwen stayed back, afraid that the horse would bite. "Oh no, they're sweet," Zach explained. "Give them apples and they'll let you pet them." The 2 horses crowded around, and then the 3rd horse made its way up. Zach carefully stroked the horses on their muzzles, which were extremely soft. One horse had a beautiful brown head mixed with white glaze, while the other 2 horses were all black. And when he gave them apples, they ate them, making a dripping mess when they chewed. Zach held out an apple and had Gwen put her hand below his. The horse took the apple and chewed it vigorously. See, the babies loved the apples. Gwen was fascinated watching and listening to how lovingly Zach talked to the horses. "Aren't you gorgeous? You know it, don't you, sweetheart?" That is the way I talk to them. The 3 horses kept eating apples, and one by one backed away to resume grazing. And standing in the background at a slight distance was a gray mule. "Isn't he sweet? Come on, baby, come over here, sweetie. Come see your Zachy," he called out. The mule stood reluctant and still eventually walked forward after Zach made smooching sounds. He explained to Gwen that when he was a little boy, he would bring the horses and mules apples, which made his mother angry. Once she was going to make a pie with some Granny Smiths and was furious at me. The 2 laughed as Zach fed the mule. "This sweet creature reminds me of you," Gwen said, hovering in the background, not trying to stand out, minding its own business. He turned and looked at Gwen, who made a beaming smile on her face. And as the 2 pet the mule, Zach placed the side of his head on the mule's head while it was chewing, gently hugging the animal. "These horses are fiercely independent," he said quietly. "Feisty, unpredictable, but truly God's finest creatures. I love them, and when I was much younger, around 6 or 7 years old, I used to think only the horses loved me. I would come home from school and my mother wasn't there. An empty house can play with your mind. I'd get scared and I'd come over and play with my friends across the street. I've been doing it for years now." Gwen put her arm on Zach's and leaned against him. "How could anyone be anything but sweet to you?" And as the mule had a 3rd apple, Zach said goodbye to his gentle 4-legged friend, and he and Gwen began walking back to the car. "That was wonderful," she gushed. "Thank you for introducing me to your special friends. I've never seen you light up like that. It was beautiful." Zach opened the passenger door for Gwen and ran around and climbed in. "They're my friends, and so are you. You are always happy to see me, which means a lot." "You'll always have me," she replied, taking his hand. Zach knew he needed to tell someone what happened to him in June. Gwen was now his closest friend and confidant. He believed he could trust her. The following week, after Charlie Brown performances, this is about a month later, Gwen and her parents flew up to Pennsylvania to visit Bryn Mawr, where she was thinking of going to college. She gave Zach her parents tickets to the Lexington Philharmonic, and something happened. Something really unexpected happened. And what happened is that Zachary met a very handsome, tall man who was 22 years old. Zachary was 18. And he was a violinist. In real life, he was an oboist, but he changed things to mask the look. So he went over to Jeremiah Pruitt's apartment, and they'd gotten to know each other, and it was very nice. Zach smiled warmly as Jeremiah kissed his nose. He felt that this man whose arms were wrapped around him was genuine and kind and appeared to have a loving heart. Time would tell. And for today, he thought their kissing and cuddling on the couch was one of the most romantic experiences of his life. After the two were dressed, takeout food arrived. Together, they sat at the table and organized dinner. Bach's Air on a G-string was playing, along with a suite of other music. The meal was delicious, and Jeremiah talked more about his devotion to music. I think it's tremendous you have a talent and you work so hard at it, Zach said. I can tell you sacrificed to develop yourself. It's so impressive. I think being in New York, wow, I can't imagine how exciting it must be. I will be practicing, he said, and rehearsing for long hours, so getting out in the city will be challenging. But it's the greatest place in the world. The noise, the energy, the art, the people. Jeremiah asked Zach if he wanted the last egg roll, and he shook his head. Then he brought up a tough topic. You know, Zach, many men in New York are dying, gay men. Public health officials call it GRID, but it's like a disease killing gay men. It's really scary. When I've been in New York, I like to go to some bathhouses. I'm kind of afraid now, but Zach reached over and took his hand. That sounds really scary. I wouldn't want anything to happen to you. Thank you, honey. That's so kind and sweet. I want to come home and see you. Zach fanned himself. You flatter me. I'll be here. And squeezing Jeremiah's hand, he continued, I want you to do well up in New York. I'm so impressed. I need to get back and see you. Jeremiah gently kissed Zach. He stood up and changed the record. This is Introduction to Tarantella Op. 43 by Pablo I can't pronounce this easily, de Sarance, I'm sorry. One of the pieces that we will be performing in New York. Listen for the violin. I'm learning these chords, practicing for hours. Jeremiah put the focus on Zach. What do you want to do in your life? He asked. Where do you want to go? Zach was self-conscious. I hope to get into a university somewhere. I want to study accounting. I'm taking it now in school, and I hear it's much harder in college, but I really want to try to become a CPA. Jeremiah leaned in. I'm so glad you're not a musician. I could never go out with another male musician. It never works out. I think you want to do what you want to do is great. You know, if I ever move to New York for good, there's always demand for CPAs up there, I imagine. Zach giggled, blushing. Oh, well, listen, my father doesn't believe in me, and I doubt that could ever happen, even differently. I'm sure he loves you, but probably doesn't, Jeremiah said it, I'm sure he loves you, but probably doesn't know what's best for you. You can figure this out for yourself. You must decide your destiny. It's not your parents' decision. My father hated that I became a musician when I was young. Too bad. I worked for hours, 7 days a week, practicing. That is the way you develop your talent. And you have talent. Now, I'm not Now, I'm one of the Philharmonic's youngest first chairs, and as a graduate from the University of Kentucky, I had been invited, along with a consortium of graduates across the country, to study, rehearse, and perform together. I may end up going to Juilliard for graduate school. My mother is my biggest supporter, and I thank God for that. Jeremiah's tenacity and willingness to compete so hard to be the very best made an impression on Zach. He even has a beautiful soul, Zach thought. And as the two were cleaning dinner plates, Jeremiah reached into the soapy water, taking Zach's hand. So, my sweet Zachary, would you like to sleep over tonight? Nothing sexual unless you want to. Zach looked up at him smiling. I wish I could, but I must get home from my father. He needs me. I have to give him his insulin in the early morning. Along with Gwen Ferris, Jeremiah Pruitt helped save Zach, an extremely ambitious museum who taught Zachary that perfection, becoming better with your craft, your skills, are vital to becoming the best person that you can. Mostly, Jeremiah helped Zach understand that he had value as a gay man. He taught Zach how to find his loving, passionate side, and after enduring a sexual assault, Jeremiah's acts of warmth, compassion, and love helped Zach feel comfortable with his sexual side. Zach trusted Jeremiah and to not be afraid of him. Jeremiah's musical abilities helped Zach to see the world of hard work, sacrifice, dedication, and an obsession with perfection. It made an indelible imprint on young Zachary. Jeremiah taught him that nothing is impossible if you are ambitious and want it. His entire existence was painted with tenacity. Jeremiah stressed you have to work harder than anyone to obtain success. But Zach's loving friend left him to study in New York and Europe. I do believe God had a plan for Zach, and both Gwen and Jeremiah were intersections that made Zach's life possible. And unfortunately, given the hatred and horror that Zach endured, some of the worst rejection coming from his family, these two people saved Zachary. They saved me. Gwen Ferris and Zach eventually became romantic. She accepted him for being gay, and they fell for he fell for her, and he fell for him anyway. And he found her love irresistible. And I will leave you with this card that he gave her on Valentine's Day in February 1982. Awakening My Heart by Zachary Benjamin Kingdon. We were merely two parallel lines, barely noticeably apart, so anxious to meet, so close, so needing to feel, to touch. And when we did, finally, your gentle sweetness flooded my heart, reawakening my soul, giving me a reason to feel. Love was no longer dormant. You give me a reason to trust my feelings, to laugh, to smile, to cry, to have irrational happiness. You awoke my spirit. I waited for you, and you came, and each week our love and bond grows. Your sweet, lovely face is so sunny. It all happens so quickly. And as the intersection of our lines has met, regrettably, not sooner, you have a friend, always. You are not alone. You are loved. You are so special. And you did a wonderful thing. You awakened my heart. The woman who represents Gwen Ferris's character, is the greatest female love of my life. She is always in my heart, and I am always in hers. And I regret to tell everybody that she's no longer alive, but I will tell you she is here with me right now. She's the greatest female love of my life, just like Frank is the greatest male love of my life. And then there was the Kentucky Theater and Fred Mills. Zach was an ardent film lover and was hired by Fred in the winter of 1982. And working at the Kentucky exposed Zachary to a gay-friendly oasis. He got to know and love Fred, the manager, who taught Zach so much about gay life and culture. Drag queens, Miss Thing, girlfriend. It was all new to Zach. The Kentucky is a safe haven for all of those of us who are deemed as other. In creating a kind and welcoming environment, Fred helped Zach not to take everything so seriously. And on a personal note, it was the most meaningful time I ever spent in Lexington, and I never laughed so hard in my life, something I truly needed at that time. I love Fred and consider him part of my family, and he's still the manager of the Kentucky Theater even as we speak. And he is setting up a book reading for me in late June, part of Lexington, the Gay Pride, Lexington Pride. So I'm really looking forward to that. And lastly, to share with you, I'm writing a series of short stories about the Kentucky Theater. And I always say I was paid $3.35 an hour when I worked there. But it was the most meaningful job I ever had in my life. And I can't deny that. To conclude, I want to share with you that I would not be here without the love and kindness of Gwen and Jeremiah. Their love helped me as a gay man find my authenticity. Jeremiah taught me to go for everything I wanted in life, and strangely I did. And that nobody can define you. And being a gay man is a wonderful gift from God. You define yourself. Exiting the Bluegrass Turnpike is not about escaping Kentucky. It's about standing at the precipice of what Gwen called the wilderness of life. And Zach went for it. Thank you all so much for your support and being here. So I know some of you might have some questions, but Maria has a few, and then any questions that you all have, or just jump in if you want anytime.
Oh, sorry. That was great, thank you.
Thank you.
I loved reading the book the first time, but listening to like the excerpts. In the book, Gwen proclaims her mezzanine love for Zach. What is mezzanine love?
Mezzanine love is, this is really kind of a very special, unique friendship. It happened to be between Zach, a girl, and me, or Zach and Gwen, a girl and a boy. And the way she described it to Zach was friendship is on the lower level, romance is on the top level, and in between is the mezzanine. So she loved him so much and proclaimed her mezzanine love for Zach. And that's when they began, we went down a romantic rabbit hole together. And I never regret it. I love this person very much. But it is that very unique friendship. I wouldn't say, you could have mezzanine love with two men, two women. It doesn't have to necessarily even turn romantic. Just happened to for she and I. But it is, it's a very beautiful, touching thing. And I will say this, many years later, when she was sick, that's exactly what it had become for she and I. I miss her every day. I think of her every day. I think that she inspired my life so much, and I'm very grateful that we found that very special place in our life together.
The book graphically depicted a rape scene. How were you able to write about it?
I want to thank Erin Chandler at Rabbit House Press because when she edited the book, first of all, I'm very honest in the book about the sexual encounters that Zach has with Jeremiah and Zach has with Gwen. part of authenticity as a gay man. I wanted to write exactly what the experience was. And unfortunately, along with that, I did share in very graphically what had happened to Zach, and unfortunately had happened to me. I could never have written this book as a memoir. I had to write it in third person. And when I created Zach, I shifted all of everything about me to him. I feel kind of guilty in a way, but I also know that I care about him. And if I could think of Zach that way, therapeutically, the therapist I hired for the book, Ken Howard, who did an endorsement on the back, Ken's a great friend. He said this is expressive therapy. It's about taking what had happened inside of you and shifting it. And to be perfectly honest, Maria, a lot of it was, I went through life with a broken heart. Something is so horrible like that, and the rejection from your own family, I am still rejected by my family. I had to write it in third person, and I kind of got the notion to write this book finally after, in 2017, on April 26th and 27th, I had stents put into my heart, 5 stents, which Frank and I got married a couple of days before, but it was then I started realizing I wanted to tell this story. And when I tried to tell the story from first person, it was just impossible. Writing this horrific thing in third person with Zach, I could write it, and I did.
And leading into another, as a gay man, authenticity has always been, central for you being yourself. Can you explain how the book assisted you in becoming more authentic to yourself?
Well, I think, part of it also had to come out as being gay to my students, to my colleagues, and I didn't hide it anymore. And when I got married, everybody saw me with a wedding band, and, it's like, oh, you got married, what's her name? Frank. Oh, like a Frankie? I said, yeah, it's a Frankie, all right. But, and strangely enough, people were phenomenal about it. And the students were tremendous, and I am so appreciative. But what really matters, I think, and because I get very direct about what's going on in the world right now, I am going to be damned if I'm going to change myself to make Donald Trump happen, okay? I absolutely, all the hatred and things that, and I tell you, Stephen Miller, standing on the front of the White House steps, this is for you guys here, standing on the White House steps, just going off on all these things about how awful, queers are and trans people. He is a Roy Cohn. He is a queer himself. I don't care if he's married to a woman. He is, I'm sick of this fucking shit, and I just call it out. So, it's tiresome. So being authentic is not straying from who you are and just being who you are. And if people don't like who you are, like my family, too bad. Don't be in my life. And that is sort of like a line that we draw, and unfortunately we have to be that way. Surprisingly, I've had a lot of fraternity brothers from the past, and I was mentioned in our fraternity magazine. There was a whole article about me writing this book and everything. And I've gotten very nice people coming out of, from my past and saying really sweet things, not knowing. And sometimes people say they don't care. Maybe that's one thing. But listen, getting into the whole piece about the sex in the book between Zach and Jeremiah, for example, when Erin and I talked about it, she did not want to change a thing. She did not. And I so respect her for that because, as an artist, she respected me, and she said, I think it's important people understand how gay people live, and that is being authentic. And it's not trying to be explicit, it's not trying to be, or to emote eroticism or anything like that. But it is about trying to just be your authentic self and never be anything different. It's changed my life. And, again, I say I couldn't have written the book if I hadn't been in a safe space with my sweetheart, who makes everything safe for me.
It's wonderful.
Anybody have any questions? Marla, go ahead.
As you know, I'm obsessed with fiction. I never thought of writing a novel. You said to me you were ready to write. Can you explain your narrative process? Because putting the whole thing, I'm always in awe when I read novels, when I read prose, short stories are a whole other different thing. I'm really looking forward to that because short stories, it's a whole different way of putting narrative fiction together, certainly, because you really have to get people and keep them for a very short period of time. The novel is different. Can you explain how you went from A to Z, basically? And also, I know you're very disciplined, and I know this for many years about you, even from watching you do your laundry on Sunday mornings. And I really remember. So I was really impressed.
It's at 5:30, 6 a.m.
Yes, I remember this. I was very impressed with it. Yes, with your shirts and everything. So I know you were probably on a pretty strict schedule. So what schedule did you set for yourself? And how much did you write every day? And did you stick to that?
I did. Frankie will tell you, I get up at, when I'm in the book writing place, I get up at 4 a.m. And let me just tell you what 4 a.m. is like. It's wonderful. It's your time that you own. It's private. Sometimes it's dark this time of year. The light comes in pretty quick. Coffee's going. And I would just start writing. I always knew where I wanted to go. Why do surgeons why do you get prepped to go into surgery at 6 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m.? It's because surgeons do their very best when they're fresh, and no different for me. And I wrote in the morning. I remember Frankie would come out of the bedroom and he would see me crying. And he was like, "What happened? Oh my God." It's what's with the tears? And I'd say, "Oh, it's all good, sweetie. It's all good. It's just writing something and just, marinating in the process." I am such a freed person from writing this book, and I will tell you, and I know you can write a novel, Marla. You can do it. I really want you to do it. I have to say, David helped me a lot. I had David Cashin from Kevin Anderson Writing, who's just a tremendous person. He helped me with Cardinal and Gratz Part 2. It was not cheap, but he was phenomenal. He used to be I think he was a senior acquisition editor at Penguin or Random House or one of them. So he knew his stuff. And just like anybody that gets in their 50s, they let you go. And so that's just what he does. And he's very gifted at it. But he taught me so much about how you, show versus tell in the book. We have a bad habit of, telling people, and we should show them what the action is. He taught me how there were so many things. He called it killing your darlings. I mean, those of you in the literary world would know what that means, but it was about the concept. There are going to be some wonderful parts of the book, and we're going to chop it out. You still own it. It's kind of like the editing floor. You still own it. It's still yours, but you don't, it's not going to go in the book. He said, "Trust me, reread it, what we did," and I did, and it worked. I mean, I didn't like some of the things that he took out, but I trusted. And that's the other thing. As an accountant, we work with experts, and you have to rely sometimes on the work of others. And trusting him, he was the expert. I'm not. I hired him, and he helped me so much. And he was very tough. He was very, very brutal sometimes. And but truly, when I say that, just a lovely, lovely human being. but that's what I paid him for, and I think it's a much better product. And it made Erin's part very easy when she went through and did her editing part. You know? So it's real dedication. I love to write. I'm going to be working on a screenplay, that's new to me, on exiting. And you know, listen, I think the thing I will say, getting this thing published was a miracle. It really was. But don't let anybody ever tell you, you'll say, you know, again, all these agents said no to me or didn't even respond. And they don't, as I was talking to talking earlier about just the whole thing about getting published as a gay man and about a gay story. You know, and I think Greg and I were talking about this. It's just impossible to get picked up. They don't want to publish our books. It's not that they're homophobic. And I was in Kentucky a couple of weeks ago, and I ran into an agent, and she and I were standing in line for lunch. She was from the Tobias agency, and she said to me, and I said, you know, can I ask you a question? Can I give you my elevator pitch on what the book is? Just tell me why it probably got rejected. And so I told her what the book was about. And she immediately says, I'm sure it's a wonderful book. I'm sure it's lovely. The market is going to buy it. And that's why you're not getting picked up. It's not anything personal. I'm sure it's a beautiful book. And she says, I can't begin to tell you how many query letters I read, and it looks like a great book, and I have to reject it because I can't sell it. So many good books, ideas that when you do a query letter, it's about the elevator pitch on the book. And then the agent's like, okay, I'll look at your sample that you gave me. And then if I like more, then I'll ask you to send the full manuscript. Not one person asked to read the manuscript. And it's really just, it gets to you after a while. And I just about was ready to shelve the thing until I had lunch with Brian Marcy in Midtown. And that's when all this happened. So listen, don't let anybody say no to you. You know, they'll all say no, but you'll find a place to get it published. And I will also say this is an independent bookstore. This place, you don't have that many Random House books here. You know, most of the books here were indie press, college and university presses, which are great places to publish. I saw an NYU press on one of those books back there. NYU is a very, they're really big on it, and thank God for them, because the best books that are published are not the one that Colleen Hoover did the movie recently. I read the book, and I read Colleen Hoover's book. It Ends With Us, and I'm not trying to brag, but this is a significantly better book. But sorry, and and listen, it is what it is. I'm not trying to knock her. She's putting out a product and one, and not a bad one, but I'm just like, really? But that's the way it is. Yes, Burrow.
You said you got rejected. You heard the word no 126 times.
Yeah.
How did your relationship with the word no change between the first no and the 126?
Well, Burham, you know me well. You've had me for several classes. You know, I am extremely, I don't know, I used to tell you all in class, no's can be turned to yeses. When everybody says no to you, it's like, okay, that's fine. That's your starting position. But I will convert it to a yes. I'm very, I just always been that way. I've been in New York for 34 years, 35 coming up next year. I always say to people, I was born in Kentucky, but I grew up in New York, and I literally did. When I moved here in my late 20s, I grew up here. I mean, this place is tough, but I learned a lot of lessons about, I'm a union officer, so I'm very aggressive. And Maria and I used to be grievance officers together, so everybody knows that, I can raise my voices and I can get very direct. And if I get in your face,
Watch out. Duck.
I'm gonna take you down. But, this nice little sweet boy in this book grew up and he became a man. I often think about what my father would think of me now. My father did see that I graduated from college. He died in 1987, and may he rest in peace. I love him so much. We had a very tough relationship together, but you'll learn some interesting things about my daddy in the book. But the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. But I have to say, Frankie will tell you this, I am a lot like my father. I am. And the funny part, my father was, believe me, I don't say GD as much because Frank is Catholic and can't tolerate it. Frank doesn't like me cursing like that. But my father said GD everything. I mean, it was just terrible. But, I will share with you, my brother read the book and wrote me Sunday night. I said, oh my God. I handed the phone to Frank. And so Frank read it and he says, no, it's good. It's not bad. It's just that I didn't want to read it until I had a private time. And I read it the next day. I was actually surprised. It was very sweet. And I just wrote him back a couple of lines. Not getting too personal about it, but he said he was shocked at how well written it was and that I captured the essence of my father perfectly and that it really touched him and moved him. This is the brother who's Cameron in the book, and he was very rotten to me as a kid. But I honestly think that, listen, I always came to the conclusion, I told him a few years ago when he did call me, I said, listen, I love you, I love all of you, and I forgive you what has happened, but let's just move on. I'm not gonna try to be friends or be brotherly with you, I'm moving on. And people who do a lot of harm to people, there are a lot of people who are realizing now how they've done such harm to their siblings or friends they knew, really cruel things. And now they know that it's just not acceptable. And I don't want the political climate to cause people to feel that they can treat us again like, somehow we're second-class citizens. I simply won't tolerate it. And you all know, I've had to educate people. I'm like, let's rephrase this. I have a colleague who says, well, you queer people. I said, it's okay to say it, but, don't look at us like we're, Will and Grace and we're here to make you laugh and that we're funny. I mean, we are funny, but no different than anybody else. I don't like all that stereotype stuff. So you have to you have to educate people. So anyway, other thoughts or suggestions or questions or anything?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the next novel, is it kind of personal and autobiographical? Where are we going to now?
It's a sequel to this.
Okay, and we're in New York maybe? I read the first, okay, now I'm gonna read
And
it.
actually, it's gonna have 545 West 111th Street in the book. Yes, it is. Oh, the second book. Now listen, I gotta tell you, David Cashin, my book manager, when he did his, at the very end, he does an analysis of the book. I have to tell you on that one, he said it is unlike anything he's ever read in his life. He said, I honestly want to tell you that I have never read anything like that. The first book is one thing, the second book is another, and then you kind of get to see how Zach grew up to become a man. And you'll learn that I was a person who took a lot of shit from people and freely took it. I grew up taking crap from people all the time, getting beaten up, and thank God they discovered I was gay when I was a senior in high school, so then it all ended. But, I met some tremendous people in my life. I will tell you in the book, there is Gwen and Zach get engaged, they get married, and some terrible things happen. But I'll just leave the rest there. It is, I don't know, I love the first book, but I think the second book is, I wrote it as a standalone book. So if you've never read the first book, you could read it and you know. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to try to moving that into publication in 2 years. I want to get this book, establish its own identity and sell it, and working on these other projects. I do want this book to be made into a movie. I'm kind of obsessed about that. So you just have to know that everybody's going to say no to me going forward. And when it does get made, God willing, you'll know that enough people said no, and I turned it into yes. But let's wait till then before you can clap about that. But I am tenacious. Frank knows I've already picked out who I want as the director, and so directors don't look at these projects until they're in screenplays. So I have to get the screenplay done by the end of the summer.
So so that means you're gonna have to listen to the podcast, what went wrong, which is about making movies and all the things that go into
really?
I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
Please.
it's incredibly good.
What went wrong? Put it in your phone. It's
Okay.
funny and entertaining.
I'd love
and
to.
sad at the same time.
And you hear all sorts of crazy
Yeah,
stuff that you
yeah.
won't believe
It's
happened,
all the
but
popular
happened.
big movies like
Oh my
Jaws, Gone
God.
with the Wind. Boy,
Oh,
the
that
Wizard
is
of Oz was a tough
interesting.
movie, tell you. Poor Judy, it was worse than we all know. Waiting for Mr. Valley, the dolls. Yeah, The Shining. My God, what a baby was to poor Shelley Duvall, who just died.
Yeah, that I've heard about.
Yeah.
Niall, you had something. What?
You're mentioning first book, second book. Your first book doesn't read like a first book. It's so nicely put together. So,
Thank you.
so compliments on that. And for anyone who haven't read the book yet, it's a tragedy. It's a romance. It's an insight into Kentucky.
Yep.
And how Kentucky is. It's a tearjerker. I cried over my garlic bread. I still had the garlic bread. Yeah, so, but one thing came to mind as you were reading earlier, because I don't think the reading does the book justice in terms of what's in there, all the different stories going on.
Right.
So I understand why you say you want to do a series of stories about the theatre down in Kentucky. Gwen's parents.
Yeah.
So you pop in your life and so on, and they appear to be really nice to you. Did your relationship with them develop later on, or how did they accept you?
Well, in real life, there was no Dr. Ferris. There was only her mom. But I put part of what you have to do is Gwen is no longer, that's not her real name, but Gwen is no longer alive. I still felt an obligation to mask the family and mask her privacy. People know who she is, and I can tell, but I masked everyone as much as I could, to protect them. And her mom was a tremendously wonderful lady, and I miss her. She passed about 3 years ago, and but she did not want me writing this book. I can tell you that. And I went ahead and wrote it. I love her, but I am going to write this book. To be honest, part of it is also the fact that, I'm still young, I'm 61, but I want to leave something into the world that can realize this wonderful relationship happen. And in the second book, when it comes out, I want the world to know all the things that had happened. And, to know that Zach finally found incredible love in his life, and how important that is. That is a really, really important thing, because there's some people that go through life and they never find it, and they're wonderful people. And it's almost like they're dealing with, book agents or something. They keep getting rejected, but oh, thank you so much. But there is a happy ending. The one thing I'll say about this story is Zach has a parallel love going on here. At one point, he's in love with Jeremiah, but then he finds and falls in love unexpectedly with a girl. And, that's kind of strange, but, listen, we all go through our own, identities and our own struggles and meet certain people. And I think I learned an awful lot from Gwen in the book. I'd say Zach learned a lot from Gwen and became a better man and a better person because of having her in his life. Women, as I said, are tremendously important to gay men. They really are. And she was tremendously important in my life, and I love her very, very much. I speak about her in present tense because even though I know she's gone, I know she's with me, and I feel that way very strongly. Yes, Matt?
So I just had a comment regarding rejection, because I can relate to it. I applied for, I don't know how many jobs when I came out of my postdoc, and it was a disastrous experience, but it only takes one.
That's correct.
And that's what I think people need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'm here 31 years later, in the same job. And, it works. So, you just gotta keep at it.
Absolutely. I mean, if you were to say to me when I was 18-year-old that I would ever become a college professor living in New York City, I'm living in New York City because in real life, Gwen actually didn't go to Bryn Mawr, she went to Barnard. And how did I get used to the neighborhood that I have we have two homes, just to let you know. I live with Frankie on the Lower East Side, and we have the Upper West Side home. And I don't live up there anymore, but I still have it. I got used to going and visiting her at Barnard, and that's how I got used to the neighborhood, and I loved it. And I ended up buying an apartment when I moved here, up there, and I've been there ever since. And rejection is part of life. We talk about that with these young kids who, in my classes, going and interviewing for jobs, and there's always things, and it's very easy to take things personally. I'm not saying it isn't, but I just, I've lived here so long. Listen, people say no to me all the time, and that's all right. Well, you can hold that position for now. So I don't always get what I want, but listen, you all have been here, you all live here, you know what it's like. I'm actually very proud this book was not a New York production. I don't know if you all noticed, when I do read in the book, my voice is more Southern. When I did my book reading for St. John's, and Niall was at that one, people noticed, oh my gosh, your accent was so it's true. It does, when I read in the book, it's very Southern. And I never lost it. What's going on upstairs? There,
moving chairs around.
Organizing something exciting up there. Any other questions or any comments or thoughts? Yes?
Where are you working on the audio part? Because it would be great to hear the Southern.
Yes, I did look into the audio part of the book, and it's not over with yet. There is a man in Kentucky who said if he found a person who is a younger person, male voice, that he would let me know, but he hasn't found one yet. But I probably could find somebody up here, but I'll be honest, I'm kind of stuck with wanting to work with Kentucky people. Brad Wills, who was somebody I knew in Kentucky, referred me to him. Brad does book readings, but Brad's like my age or just a year older or two older. But he said he was too old to do it, but he put me in touch with this man. I would love to be able to do, an audio book. And there's a side to me, it's like, what the hell, I might read it myself. But I still, you can hear it. I'm a 61-year-old, so you can tell. But it's much different if you have a younger kid who can do it more authentically, I think. So, anyway, thank you all so much for coming. If anybody has, if anybody wants me to sign their book, I am more than happy to sign it. And thank you, Greg. Thank you so much.